That night, in a rain-drenched alley in Brooklyn, Elena Morales, a single mother just trying to get home, heard a child scream. 3 masked men, a black van, and a boy begging for his life. She didn't run. She threw a bottle, faced down danger, and unknowingly saved the son of New York's most feared mafia boss. From that moment on, her life would never belong to her again. Before we dive in, tell me, where are you watching from? I'd love to know how far this story will travel. The night air was thick with rain and exhaustion. Elena Morales pulled her jacket tighter, the diner's neon sign still flickering behind her as she hurried through the narrow back streets of Brooklyn. Her sneakers squished against the soaked pavement, her hair clinging to her face. All she could think about was getting home to Sophia. Warm bath, cheap cocoa, bedtime stories, just one quiet night. But fate never asks permission. A faint cry cut through the storm. High-pitched, desperate. "Please, my dad will pay you anything." Elena stopped dead. Her pulse thudded in her ears. She peered down the alley, a dim strip of concrete choked by dumpsters and shadows. 3 masked men were dragging a small boy toward a black van. He couldn't have been older than 8. The boy kicked, bit, fought like a wildcat. But the men were stronger. Every instinct screamed run. But another voice, her mother's voice, rose up inside her. "If you see someone helpless, you help." Before fear could take hold, Elena's hand found a broken beer bottle near a trash bin. She raised it high. "Let him go!" The shout ripped through the night. The men froze. Then, before they could react, she hurled the bottle. It shattered near their feet, shards glinting under the rain. The boy seized the moment, sank his teeth into one man's wrist, then tore free, stumbling straight into Elena's arms. He clung to her waist, shaking, sobbing. "It's okay," she whispered, voice trembling. "You're safe now. I got you." Headlights burst through the alley, 2 black SUVs blocking both ends. Doors slammed. Men in suits poured out, forming a wall of muscle and steel. The kidnappers backed away, hands up, realizing they'd just picked the wrong child. And then he stepped out. A tall man in a dark tailored suit. Broad shoulders, no umbrella. Rain streaking through his slicked back hair, dripping off his sharp jawline. His steel-gray eyes caught hers, cold, assessing, unreadable. Vincent Moretti, the gentleman devil of Brooklyn. Elena had heard whispers about him at Frankie's Grill, the man who ruled the city's underworld like a chessboard. Ruthless, elegant, untouchable. He walked slowly toward them, the crowd parting as if by instinct. His gaze dropped to the trembling boy in her arms. "Nico," he said quietly. The boy turned, eyes wide. "Papa!" He ran forward, burying his face in Vincent's chest. Elena's breath caught. The child she'd risked her life for was his son. Vincent knelt, resting a hand on Nico's shoulder, eyes never leaving her face. "You just saved my boy." Elena nodded faintly, rain dripping from her hair. Anyone would have done the same. A faint, humorless smile tugged at his mouth. "No. Most people would have looked away." He stood, straightening his jacket. His voice dropped low enough for only her to hear. "In my world, Ms. Morales, saving a life has consequences." She frowned, confused. "Consequences?" He leaned in, so close she could smell the faint trace of whiskey and gunpowder on his breath. "It means you belong to me. Or you're already dead." The alley fell silent. Even the rain seemed to hesitate. Elena's stomach turned. She wanted to laugh it off, to walk away. But something in his tone froze her feet. He wasn't threatening her. He was stating a fact. Behind him, the masked men were being dragged away, beaten, disarmed. Nico peeked out from behind his father, his small fingers twisting the hem of Vincent's coat. The boy's eyes found hers, pure gratitude and fear tangled together. Vincent turned to his men. Get their plates. Find out who sent them. Then, back to her. We'll talk soon. She opened her mouth to protest, but he was already walking toward his car. Nico in his arms. The SUVs pulled out in unison, leaving her alone in the rain, heart pounding, hands trembling, the echo of his words ringing in her head. You belong to me. By the time she reached her apartment, dawn had started to bleed into the skyline. Sophia was still asleep, curled under her pink blanket, clutching her stuffed bear. Elena sat on the edge of the bed staring at her reflection in the dark window. She'd done the right thing. She had to believe that. But deep down, something told her. Tonight hadn't been an accident. Somewhere out there, the gentleman devil was thinking about her. And whatever that meant, it wouldn't be over soon. That night, in a rain-soaked alley, Elena Morales, a tired single mother, had changed the fate of Brooklyn's most feared man. And her own. Elena barely slept. Morning crept in through the cracked blinds, casting pale slivers across the worn carpet of her apartment. Sophia's tiny breaths rose and fell beside her, curled up on their lumpy couch, arms draped around a stuffed bear missing an eye. Elena was still in the same damp jeans from the night before, her mind replaying that alley again and again. The glass bottle, the scream, the man with the gunmetal eyes. A knock at the door snapped her awake. 3 sharp raps, too deliberate to be a neighbor. She opened it halfway, chain still latched. 2 men in tailored black suits stood outside, hands folded in front, no smiles. Elena Morales? Her throat tightened. Who's asking? Mr. Moretti requests your presence. She blinked. Excuse me? Now, ma'am. I have a shift at Frankie's. It's been handled. One of them cut in smoothly. Paid leave. Mr. Moretti arranged it. Her fingers tightened around her purse strap. I'm not going anywhere without my daughter. One of the men exchanged a glance with the other, then nodded. She's safe. You'll be back before dinner. Against every instinct screaming at her, Elena stepped into the hallway and shut the door behind her. The car waiting downstairs was sleek, black, and silent. Tinted windows, soft leather, the kind of ride that didn't stop for red lights. No one spoke on the way. By the time they reached Long Island, the city was a memory behind them. The Moretti estate rose from the mist like something out of a crime novel. Stone walls, wrought iron gates, guards with earpieces. Inside, it was colder than she expected. Quiet, despite the size. The kind of place where you whispered without knowing why. They led her through marble halls until they stopped in front of a thick oak door. Elena Morales, one man said. The door opened. Vincent Moretti sat behind a mahogany desk, backlit by a stained glass window. The air smelled of aged whiskey and old incense, like a church that hadn't seen forgiveness in decades. He didn't stand when she entered, just studied her. Sit. She didn't. Why am I here? He poured himself a drink. Tell me exactly what you saw last night. So she did. Every detail. Her voice was steady, though her hands trembled in her lap. Halfway through, a man leaned against the bookshelf, arms crossed. Sharp cheekbones, watchful eyes. Dominic Vallo. She recognized the name. Consigliere. She's too calm, he said. Too convenient? Elena turned to him, jaw tight. Convenient? I saved your boss's son. Or staged it, Dominic said coolly. Plenty of people would trade blood for access. Vincent's eyes never left hers. He sipped his drink, then spoke softly. You're not lying. Elena exhaled, relief beginning to stir, until he added, But in my world, truth doesn't make you safe. She stood abruptly. I've answered your questions. I'm going home. The door opened behind her, tiny footsteps pattering across the hardwood. Miss Elena. Nico, the boy from the alley. He ran straight to her, grabbed her hand with both of his. Don't go. You make the nightmares stop. Her heart cracked. She knelt. You're okay, baby. You're safe now. Vincent's expression shifted. His fingers tapped once on the desk, then stopped. For one brief second, the mob boss vanished, and a weary father remained. She stays, he said to Dominic. Under protection. Full surveillance. Dominic stiffened. Vin, that's an order. The room froze. Elena looked up at him. What does that mean? It means you're not going back to that apartment. Not yet. I have a daughter. She'll be brought here, he said. No harm will come to her. Why would I trust you? Vincent leaned forward, eyes hard as granite. Because last night you stepped into a war without knowing it, and once you touch this world, it never lets you walk away. Elena looked down at Nico, who wouldn't let go of her hand. She didn't say yes. She didn't have to. By nightfall, she and Sophia were being escorted to the east wing of the Moretti estate. The door closed behind them with a quiet click. And just like that, Elena Morales, a waitress from Sunset Park, became a protected asset of the most feared man in New York. But even then, she didn't know. Protection wasn't safety, and surveillance was a cage. The Moretti estate was beautiful in the way a cathedral is beautiful. Grand, echoing, built for reverence, not comfort. Elena stood in the guest wing's arched doorway, holding Sophia's hand as a maid showed them their new safe space. The room was twice the size of their entire apartment back in Sunset Park. Ornate moldings lined the ceilings. The sheets smelled like lavender and money. Everything looked untouched, like it was prepared for people who never actually lived here. But it wasn't the luxury that made her uneasy. It was the silence. The kind that buzzed under your skin. Guards in dark suits roamed the halls, their earpieces blinking like tiny threats. Cameras blinked from corners, watching, always watching. The windows were bulletproof. The doors clicked shut automatically. It was a castle made of glass and stone, but it felt like a cage. Sophia clutched her stuffed bear, eyes darting. Can we go home tomorrow, Mama? Elena crouched, kissed her forehead. Soon, baby. Just for now, we're guests, okay? Later that evening, while she unpacked what little they'd brought, there was a knock. Nico. He stood in the doorway, holding a toy car, eyes wide. Miss Elena, can Sophia play? Sophia lit up instantly. Within minutes, they were on the floor, building imaginary cities out of pillows and plotting daring car chases across velvet rugs. Days passed. Routines formed. Nico refused to sleep until Elena told him a bedtime story. Every night he knocked, sometimes with a blanket around his shoulders, sometimes with tears in his eyes, and she'd sit beside his bed, her voice soft in the dark. Sophia would curl up beside him, and soon the two became inseparable. Two children abandoned by peace, clinging to each other in a house that echoed with ghosts. But Elena noticed more than the children's growing bond. She noticed him. Vincent Moretti. He rarely ate with them. Rarely spoke unless it was about logistics. Guards, arrangements, security briefings. But he was always there. She'd catch him in the library at midnight, reading ancient books by firelight. Or standing by the third-floor window, staring out at the garden, a half-empty glass in his hand. Always alone, always silent. One night when she passed the study, she paused at the door. You don't sleep, do you? She asked. Vincent didn't turn. Rest, he said, his voice flat, is for men who have peace. I don't. She could have walked away then. Should have. But something rooted her to the spot. Was it always like this? She asked. He sipped from his glass, still facing the window. No, there was a time I believed in mornings. In beginnings. The silence that followed said more than the words ever could. Later that night, she passed the library again and saw something that stopped her cold. Vincent sat alone, elbows on his knees. The glass was gone. In his hands, a framed photograph. A woman. Light hair, warm eyes, smiling with a baby in her lap. Nico. Younger. Unscarred. Vincent stared at the photo like it held a memory he couldn't touch. His fingers traced the edge of the frame, slow, reverent. He didn't notice Elena standing there. Or maybe he did, and chose not to care. She backed away quietly, heart tight. For the first time, the fear began to fade, not entirely, but enough to let something else in. Understanding. Maybe even empathy. This man who ruled with silence and shadows had once loved someone deeply, had once been a father, a husband, before something twisted him into the cold figure she'd met in that alley. And maybe, just maybe, that man was still in there, buried beneath layers of loss. Back in their room, Sophia was asleep in Nico's bed again, their hands clasped between them. Elena pulled the blanket over both, then lay down on the couch beside them, staring up at the ceiling carved with gold. She whispered into the dark, "What kind of house protects you and still makes you feel so alone?" No answer came, just the quiet hum of a camera turning in the corner. It was just past noon when the knock came. Not a soft one. Sharp. Precise. A guard stood in the hallway outside Elena's room. "Mr. Moretti would like a word." Her stomach sank. She found Vincent waiting for her in a side room off the main hall, a cold, sterile space, all shadows and marble. Dominic Vallo stood beside him, arms folded, expression unreadable. "Sit," Vincent said without looking up. Elena stayed standing. "What is this about?" Dominic slid a thin folder across the table. "We found surveillance footage from 2 months ago. You served drinks to 2 known Rossi enforcers in Bay Ridge." Elena's eyes narrowed. "You think I work for Rossi?" Vincent raised his gaze to hers, flat and cold. "I think coincidence is the mask of intent, and you've worn it well." "I work at Frankie's Grill," she snapped. "You know what that means? I refill coffee and wipe down booths. I don't ask names. I don't check criminal records." "You've got fire," Vincent said evenly. "That's dangerous in my world." "And yet," she shot back, "you dragged me into your world without asking." Outside the door, a child's voice rang out. Small, scared. "Papa? Are you yelling at her?" Then the door burst open. Nico stood in his pajamas, fists clenched, face red. "Don't hurt her, Papa, don't you dare." Elena instinctively bent down, arms out. Hey, it's okay." But Vincent froze. His mask cracked just for a second. "Take him back to his room," he told a guard. His voice was quieter now. "Tell him everything's fine." When the door clicked shut again, Vincent turned to her, his voice low. "You remind him of his mother." The room fell still. "That's not a compliment," he added. "She left us, left him." Elena didn't respond. She didn't need to. Vincent didn't ask more questions, didn't accuse her again. Just stared, as if trying to decode a language no one had taught him. She finally left the room, heart pounding. It wasn't until nightfall that the knock came again. This time, it wasn't a guard. It was Vincent himself. He found her in the garden, watering a patch of white camellias beneath the moonlight. "Your alibi checks," he said. "Rossi's men were there for a sit-down with someone else. You were background." She didn't turn around. "I told you that already." "I had to be sure." She faced him now. Her voice was calm, but bitter. "And yet, you wanted me to be lying. That's the part that really stings." He didn't argue, didn't apologize, just studied her like a puzzle missing too many pieces. "I don't like things I can't read," he said. And you don't fit. Maybe because I'm not a thing, she said. I'm a person. One who didn't ask to be trapped in your cage. The silence stretched between them, taut and brittle. Finally, Vincent spoke, softer than before. You've survived my suspicion. Few do. Is that supposed to comfort me? No, he said. It's supposed to warn you. She stared at him a moment longer, then turned back to the flowers. Next time you question me, she said, just ask. Don't threaten. Vincent nodded once. Just once. Then walked away without another word. From her bedroom that night, Elena watched him from the window. Alone again, pacing the courtyard. Like a man forever searching for something he'd lost. He was powerful. Dangerous. Untouchable. But in that moment, she realized something unsettling. Vincent Moretti didn't just fear betrayal. He feared connection. And she had become the one thing in his world he couldn't control. It was the first afternoon Elena had been allowed off the estate in weeks. A security detail trailed her discreetly as she walked through a quiet street market in Brooklyn with Sophia. The sun was warm. The smell of roasted peanuts drifted from a cart nearby. For a moment, it almost felt like normal life again. Sophia tugged at her hand. Can we get strawberries, Mama? Elena smiled. Just one box, baby. While Sophia skipped ahead toward the fruit stand, Elena waited behind, pulling out her wallet. That's when she heard the voice. Miss Morales, what a surprise. She turned sharply. A man stood beside her, crisp gray suit, white pocket square, shoes polished like glass. His face was clean-shaven, handsome in a quiet way, but his eyes were cold. Marco Rossi, he said, offering a hand she didn't take. Every nerve in Elena's body went tight. You shouldn't be near me. I'm already too close, he replied with a smile. Might as well finish the conversation. She glanced at the nearest guard. He stood across the street, watching traffic. Rossi had chosen his moment well. I'm just here to talk, he said calmly. No cameras, no threats, just truths you haven't heard. He reached into his coat pocket and slid a small folder onto the produce table between them. What is that? She asked. Your reality, he said. Hospital bills, past due notices, your daughter's tuition rejection letter. Elena froze. I have contacts everywhere, Rossi continued. That's the difference between me and Vincent. He makes people disappear. I make their problems disappear. She reached for the folder but didn't open it. I don't want anything from you. He leaned in, voice dropping just above a whisper. You think Vincent's protecting you? He protects what he owns. The second you stop being useful, you're a liability. Her jaw clenched. He saw it, smiled. Tell me what he's planning next week. That's all. A name, a location. One whisper. And I erase every debt you've ever had. Your daughter can go to that school. Your brother's record? Gone. Elena's voice shook. I'd rather starve in the street than help you. He straightened his tie. You might get that chance. Then he leaned in again. Closer this time. Ask him about his wife, he said quietly. Ask him why Nico screams in his sleep. What he saw. What Vincent did. Elena went cold. You think you're healing something broken, Rossi said softly. But you don't even know what shattered it. Sophia's laugh floated over from the berry stand. Elena turned, heart racing. When she looked back, Rossi was already walking away. She stared down at the folder, then tore it in half, then again, and again. She found the card he'd slipped inside, ripped it once more, and let the pieces scatter into the wind. But the seed had been planted. Back at the estate, the halls felt heavier. Vincent's silence at dinner was no longer just intimidating. It was ominous. That night, while reading to Nico, she saw it again. the twitch in his small hands, the way his breath caught when the lights went out. "Do you want me to stay until you fall asleep?" He nodded. She smoothed his hair, but the question echoed in her head like a drumbeat. "What did you see, Nico? What's buried beneath your father's silence?" Later, she passed Vincent in the hall. He was on the phone, whispering in Italian, voice clipped. She caught only 2 words. Pierce. Shipment. He didn't see her watching. Elena returned to her room and locked the door behind her. She didn't trust Marco Rossi. Not for a second. But she couldn't unhear his voice. Ask him about his wife. And suddenly, she wasn't sure who the real devil was anymore. It was after midnight when Elena heard the heavy knock. Not a guard this time. She knew that rhythm, measured, controlled, boiling under the surface. She opened her door. Vincent stood there, face carved from stone. "Get dressed," he said. "Now." She followed him down the corridor, barefoot, barely wrapped in a robe. The tension in the house was suffocating. Somewhere behind them, footsteps trailed. Dominic, always 2 steps behind, always watching. He led her to his study and closed the door with a quiet click. "You met with Marco Rossi," Vincent said flatly. No question, a verdict. Elena didn't flinch. "And your people told you that?" "My people don't need to tell me. He left his scent all over that market." Her fingers dug into the robe's sleeves. "Your men follow me like shadows. I can't take a step without one of them breathing down my neck." Vincent leaned forward, eyes narrowing. "And so you ran into the arms of my enemy?" "I didn't run anywhere," she snapped. "He approached me. I told him nothing. But I listened. Because maybe for once I needed to remember that I still have a choice." He slammed a folder on the desk. Photos spilled out. Elena at the market, Rossi leaning in, his hand on the produce table. "You think this is choice?" Vincent growled. "You think people like us get to pick which side we're on?" Her voice cracked. "I'm not one of you. No, you're worse. Because I trusted you." Elena's throat tightened. "I just want a life where my daughter doesn't grow up afraid of men like you." Silence. Heavy. Consuming. Vincent didn't speak for a long time. He finally turned to Dominic, who had stayed silent by the door. "Pull surveillance, audio and video." Dominic nodded once and disappeared. Elena stood frozen. Her breath came in shallow bursts, her fists still clenched at her sides. "I didn't betray you," she said softly. "But you want me to have, don't you?" Vincent said nothing, just stared at the door like he could will it open. 10 minutes passed before Dominic returned with a small tablet in hand. He played the audio. Rossi's voice. "Tell me what he's planning next week." Elena's. "I'd rather starve in the street than help you." Silence. Then the sound of paper being torn. Vincent's eyes closed. "She didn't lie," Dominic said simply. "Rossi set her up. He wanted us to doubt her." The study stayed quiet after he left. Elena stood across from Vincent, her body trembling now, not from fear but from the ache of always defending herself. Vincent finally spoke, voice lower than before. "You didn't betray me." She looked up, her expression unreadable. "But don't ever walk into a devil's den again," he said, stepping closer. "Unless you plan to stay." Something in the room shifted. The air between them thinned. Neither moved. Neither spoke. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But trust, small, reluctant, and dangerous, began to form. Vincent reached for the torn photos and pushed them into a drawer without looking. "Go back to bed." She didn't move. "Why does your son scream in his sleep?" That stopped him. His hand froze on the drawer. "Elena." "You don't want me to know," she said. "But I'm already in it, Vincent. I live under your roof. Your son clings to me. If I'm going to stay, I deserve the truth." He met her gaze. Truth comes at a price. She stepped closer. Then I'll pay it. They stood like that, barely a foot apart. The mob boss and the waitress. And for the first time, neither one turned away. The morning the rumor went viral, Elena woke to her phone vibrating like a living thing. Notifications, calls, messages, dozens, then hundreds. Her fingers fumbled as she scrolled through screenshots and headlines. Moretti's mistress? Waitress lives in the mansion. Her face felt hot, like someone had pressed a match to her skin. Cameras descended on the Moretti gates by noon. Reporters with microphones formed a line at the iron fence, shouting questions into the rain. Paparazzi snapped relentless photos through the hedges. A local news van parked where Elena used to buy strawberries. The whole city wanted a scandal. Guards tightened. Vincent walked through the chaos like a storm's eye, calm, contained, but lethal. He removed the closest microphone with a gesture so subtle the man holding it never knew he'd been warned. Dominic coordinated damage control, a machine of appointments and denials. This will blow over, he told Vincent, but his voice lacked conviction. Elena stood in the East Wing doorway, watching her life fracture on live TV. A camera crew had filmed her walking into the estate days earlier and then cut the footage into a loop with a voiceover that suggested intimacy where there was none. Comments crawled across screens like ants. Strangers had already decided who she was and what she meant to him. Sophia woke up to the sound of shouting. She hugged her bear, eyes huge. Mama, are people saying bad things? Elena gathered her into her arms and kissed her forehead. They're saying lies, she whispered. But we're okay. The next blow was dusk and smoke. A neighbor's frantic call came through. Your old building, on fire. Elena's legs gave out at the kitchen counter. Her apartment, her past, was gone in a matter of hours. She watched grainy footage of flames eating wallpaper, firefighters hauling out charred furniture, neighbors huddled under blankets. Neighbors who once complained about loud music and late rent now watched her life burn in real time. He's burning my past to trap me here, Elena sobbed, hands clawing at her hair. He wants me to have nowhere to go. Vincent stood behind her, a dark silhouette at the edge of the room. His voice was quiet when he answered. Then let him. The past is ashes. You'll rise from it. It should have comforted her, but all she heard were the hollow syllables of someone accustomed to loss. Rising from ashes sounded like something that happened to other people in other stories, not the single mother with a daughter who needed pajamas and school permission slips. That night, as rain pounded the estate roof, Elena's phone buzzed again. A video. Ethan Morales, her brother, sat shackled to a chair in a dim room. A slit of light from a high window cut across his cheek. His face was bruised and swollen. He tried to smile when the camera clicked on, but it broke into a grimace. Marco Rossi's voice came through the cheap speaker. Tell Vincent, bring me the boy, bring me Nico, or your brother dies in pieces. Elena's throat closed. The world tunneled to the grainy image of Ethan's bloodied hands. She dropped the phone as if it had burned her. She ran into Vincent's study without thinking, past Dominic, who raised an eyebrow and let her pass, then through the oak door as it clicked shut behind her. He didn't flinch when she burst in, didn't raise his voice, simply turned the tablet in his hand to show her the same frame she'd seen. Please, let me go, she begged, voice raw. I can find him, I can... Vincent's jaw tightened. He did not move to embrace her. He set the device down with a deliberate calm. You think surrender saves anyone? He said, low and steady. Hand him Nico, you hand him your soul. You're asking me to choose between my brother and your son, she snapped, tears streaking down her face. How could I preserve what remains? He cut her off, each word precise. If I hand my son to Rossi, he's not a bargaining chip. He's a corpse in the morning. If I give them Ethan, They'll always come back for more. Dominic stepped in, voice clipped, practical. We can find Ethan. We have men tracing Rossi's movements. We can lure them, isolate them. But you cannot go. You can't stop me from going, Elena shot back. I saved his life once. I can save him again. Vincent's eyes softened, not gentled, but aware of the fracture in her heart. You saved a child in an alley. You have courage, but courage without a plan is vanity. She sank into a chair, exhausted in a way that reached bone. Then make a plan, she whispered. Please, make a plan that saves him and doesn't turn my daughter into a corpse. He stood a long moment, watching her unravel. The lights in the study hummed. Outside, the estate's cameras tracked movement like jealous eyes. Finally, Vincent nodded. We will not trade Nico. We will not hand over a child. We will take Rossi and break him in the places he thinks safe. Elena looked at him, something like hope flaring, but terrified at what that meant. Violence. War. The kind of warfare that swallowed people whole. We do this my way, Vincent said quietly. You stay here with Sophia until this is done. Her mouth opened, then closed. The instinct to rush into danger warred with the need to keep her daughter alive. Promise me you'll bring him back, she said, voice barely audible. He did not promise, but he set both his hands on the table and fixed her with a look that carried a terrible, unwavering certainty. I will put him back on your doorstep. Outside, the city throbbed with rumor and smoke. Inside, Elena sat in a house of shadows and waited, torn between fury and faith, and the knowledge that once you stepped into this world, nothing would ever be only yours again. The house smelled of tobacco and rain. Elena paced the study floor while Vincent and Dominic spread maps and photos across the desk like a court of war. Her voice cracked the way a line of thin ice might, sharp and terrified. You'd let my brother die to protect your empire? Vincent didn't flinch. He set his jaw, fingers pressed into the edge of the desk until his knuckles whitened. I'd let 1,000 men die to keep one innocent child safe. His tone was flat, iron, no flourish, no theater. It was a fact, cold and immovable. From the top of the stairs came the thud of barefoot feet. Nico barreled into the room, eyes blazing with that small, reckless courage children have when they don't yet understand consequence. Then let me save him, Papa. She saved me. For a second, the room shifted off its axis. Vincent's face softened in a way that surprised Elena, so small a softening that it might have been invisible if she hadn't been watching for it like a hawk. He knelt down to the boy's height, hands steady on his shoulders. You don't pay back miracles, Nico, you live them. Nico's lip trembled. He clutched at Vincent's shirt like a lifeline. Vincent's voice broke, only for a breath. You're brave in the ways that matter, but bravery without a plan gets people killed. Elena swallowed the urge to shove him back. The thought of losing Ethan, watching her brother beaten because someone with a vendetta needed leverage, made her stomach hollow. Then make a plan, she said, steadier than she felt. Do something. Vincent looked at Dominic, who had been silent, cataloging every variable with the patience of a surgeon. Dominic folded his hands. We have a few options. Direct exchange. Dangerous. Predictable. Ambush. Messy. Or we draw them out. Isolate Rossi. Cut his men off from their support. He tapped a point on the map, Pier 19, a section of docks and abandoned warehouses that had been used for Rossi shipments. It's vulnerable. He thinks it's his. He won't expect us. Elena felt the word ambush like a weight, but she heard the reasoning behind it. Lure. Isolate. Take the edges off this threat without turning Nico into bait. Her mouth tasted of copper. And Ethan? She whispered. How do you get him without giving Nico up? Vincent's jaw worked. We don't trade children. We do not exchange innocence for anything." His voice dropped to a rasp. "We end this on terms that leave our children whole." She breathed in, out, trying to stitch the panic into something usable. The plan, if it was to be a plan, needed people, precision, and a woman who was suddenly more than she had ever intended to be. Dominic looked her in the eye. "If you're in this, you'll be part of the setup. Your presence will help draw Rossi's attention. He underestimates you. He assumes you're fragile. He thinks you can be frightened back into the past." Elena's laugh came out thin. "Fragile? After the alley, the cameras, the fire? Do you think I'm fragile?" "No." Dominic's tone was almost grudging. "You're dangerous because you mean things, and men like Rossi mistake meaning for leverage." Vincent moved to stand, the map now a battlefield beneath his hands. "Tonight, we write our own ending." His declaration landed like a bell, solemn and irrevocable. The house hummed around them, the cameras, the guards, the slow clock of expectation. Elena looked at Sophia's small face, how she'd curled against the mortgage of safety the estate offered, how she'd started to sleep with a steadier breath under this giant, watchful roof. She thought of Ethan's bruised eye and the video that had been a blunt instrument against her heart. She thought of Nico's small hand in hers the first night, and how that hand now pressed into Vincent's sleeve as if claiming him for safety. A new kind of resolve rose in her, not the reckless courage of a woman who fights without thinking, but a hardened, precise determination. "I'm in," she said. The words felt like a vow. "But I do this my way. I won't be a prop." Vincent gave a nod that acknowledged both her promise and the danger of it. "You will be protected. You will be useful. And you will keep your daughter safe." Dominic began to outline specifics, timing, escape routes, the men who would shadow the perimeters. Vincent assigned a small team to sweep Rossi's known hangouts to confirm Ethan's location. Elena listened, absorbing jargon she'd never thought she'd need to know. Decoy, overwatch, cutoff. Each term stitched together the scaffold of violence they were building into a plan. They trained quietly. Vincent's men taught Elena how to read a room, how to move without announcing herself, a few basics about keeping a weapon from betraying the holder. There was an intimacy to the instruction that made her cheeks hot. It wasn't meant to be tenderness, only practicality. But in the way Vincent watched her, in the way Nico fell asleep with her voice in his ears, something fragile and fierce threaded between them. When night finally bled into the estate, the preparations were in motion. Guards doubled their rounds, cars were fueled and staged, men checked radios and loaded magazines with professional, unhurried hands. Elena put Sophia to bed in a room made safe by others' vigilance. She tucked the blanket around the child and let herself feel the small, fierce absurdity of trying to keep a life ordinary while the world's violence thudded at the edges. Downstairs, Vincent waited, coat on, the map folded into his palm like a talisman. "We go at first light," he said. "We will bring your brother home." Her answer was a whispered thing, half prayer, half threat. "Bring him back." Outside, the city held its breath. Inside, the Moretti house, so long a place of shadow, pulled its shutters tight and readied itself to write an ending that would not come without a price. The rain came down in sheets, sharp as needles, soaking Elena's coat as she stepped onto the splintering wood of Pier 19. The air stank of salt, diesel, and something older, like blood long washed away. Her boots hit the puddles one by one, each step echoing louder than the last. Vincent's words from hours earlier still rang in her ears. "You stay sharp, you stay calm, and no matter what happens, don't let him see the fear." Elena clutched the edge of her scarf tighter. Underneath, the tiny mic in her ear buzzed faintly. Dominic's voice filtered through it like a ghost. "We have eyes, rooftops, crates, South Dock. You're not alone." But the truth was, she felt it. Alone. Exposed. Ethan's life was balanced on the edge of this moment, and no amount of planning could stop what would happen if this went wrong. Fog curled around the pier like smoke from a funeral pyre, and then he stepped through it. Marco Rossi, impeccably dressed, even here, a dark trench coat, leather gloves, an umbrella he didn't bother to open. He smiled like a man greeting an old friend instead of the person he'd tried to destroy. "You came alone," he said, amused. "Brave? Or stupid?" Elena didn't flinch. "Both," she whispered. His eyes scanned the fog. "Where's the boy?" "You'll get what you came for, after I see my brother." Rossi nodded. With a flick of his fingers, two of his men dragged Ethan forward. His face was a mess of bruises and blood, but he was alive. His eyes found Elena's, and something in him softened, despite the pain. She ran to him. "Ethan." Her arms folded around him, holding tighter than she ever had before. He winced, coughed, but didn't pull away. "I'm okay," he rasped, mostly. As she hugged him, her fingers reached for the small device at her collarbone. 2 quick taps. The signal. Rossi took one step forward, then the world erupted. Gunfire cracked from the rooftops. Shadows moved from behind crates, flashing muzzles and sharp commands. Rossi's men scattered, some falling, others diving for cover. Elena shoved Ethan behind a steel drum, yelling over the chaos. "Stay down!" But before she could move, Rossi lunged, his arm around Ethan's neck, dragging him upright, pistol pressed to his temple. "Stop!" he screamed, "or he dies." The gunfire halted. The rain didn't. "Let him go," Elena said, voice trembling. "You think I won't pull this trigger?" Rossi snarled. Then came the voice that cut through the storm. "Miss Elena!" Elena's heart dropped. "Nico." He stood at the edge of the pier, soaked, panting. He must have slipped from the car, from the arms meant to guard him. Vincent's roar echoed across the water. "No." Rossi turned, his eyes going wide, a target too perfect, too fragile. He moved the gun. Elena didn't think. She threw herself forward. The shot cracked like thunder, and Elena fell. Vincent was there in seconds. His coat flared behind him like wings. 3 precise shots. Chest, shoulder, leg. Rossi staggered back, gasping, blood blooming across his tailored coat. "You killed one devil," Rossi croaked, collapsing to his knees. "Just to become another." Vincent didn't blink. "You threatened what's mine." He raised the gun again. The final shot ended it. Silence returned, except for the rain and Nico's sobbing voice calling Elena's name. Vincent dropped beside her, catching her as her body started to slacken. His hands were red, pressing against the wound in her side. "Stay with me," he ordered. His voice cracked. "Don't you do this." Elena blinked up at him. "Nico, is he safe?" "He's safe," Vincent choked. "Because of you." She tried to smile, but it hurt. "You're crying." "I am not," he lied, brushing wet strands from her face. "You stupid brave woman," he whispered, pulling her closer. "You taught me how to be human again." And as sirens wailed in the distance, and guards swept in to collect what remained of the war at Pier 19, Vincent Moretti held the one person who'd ever made him bleed. Without a single bullet. Elena woke to the soft hum of machines and the sting of antiseptic in her nose. Sunlight filtered in through gauzy curtains. The pain in her shoulder was sharp, but distant, blurred by painkillers and something deeper. She turned her head slowly. Vincent sat in the chair beside her bed, elbows on his knees, hands clasped as if in prayer. His suit was wrinkled. His eyes were sunken from sleepless nights. "You took a bullet meant for my son," he said, his voice low and rough. "From now on, my world answers to you." She blinked at him, groggy but aware. How long was I out? 3 days, he said. You scared the hell out of all of us. He stood and adjusted her blanket with a care that startled her. Ethan? She asked. Alive? He nodded. Back at the estate, working off his debts in the shipping company. Said something about forklifts and second chances. A small laugh escaped her lips, despite the ache. And the kids? Vincent finally smiled. Just a little. Sophia and Nico are in school. Together. They're making quite a name for themselves. Got called to the principal's office yesterday for staging a protest about the lunch menu. Elena rolled her eyes. Sounds about right. For the first time in what felt like years, peace wasn't a myth. It was a room with sunlight, a steady heartbeat, and a man who'd once been untouchable now reaching for something softer. That night, back at the Moretti estate, she sat with Vincent in the quiet glow of the sitting room. Outside, the moonlight painted the marble floors silver. She sipped tea slowly, then asked, almost too softly, "Do you ever regret what you became?" Vincent didn't answer at first. Then he looked at her. Really looked at her. Only when I see what I could have been, if someone like you had found me sooner. The words lingered in the air, suspended like breath. Just then, tiny feet thundered down the hallway. Laughter burst through the door. Sophia and Nico ran in, both clutching something behind their backs. "We made something," Sophia grinned. Nico pulled it out, a folded piece of construction paper covered in crooked hearts and glitter. On the front, 4 stick figures, hand in hand. Vincent, Elena, Nico, Sophia. Above them, in red crayon, "Our family, the safe house." Elena's eyes stung. Vincent took the card in his hands, his thumb tracing the edges. Then, for the first time, he smiled. A real smile. Not calculated, not for show. Just human. He looked at her, then placed a hand gently on her bandaged shoulder. "Welcome home, Elena," he murmured. And when he said the next words, his voice carried the weight of a man who had finally chosen peace over power. "In my world, family is everything." In the end, it wasn't bullets or bloodlines that shaped them, it was choice. The choice to fight for something more than survival, the choice to heal, and the choice to build a family, not from perfection, but from courage, scars, and love. Because sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is care. Thank you for following this story to its final chapter. If it touched you, moved you, or made you believe in second chances, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear where you're watching from and what part of Elena and Vincent's journey stayed with you most. Until the next story, stay safe, stay strong, and remember, family is everything.